You're just in it for the money, aren't you? You're such a hypocrite.
I think so. She's so mean. Not only is your face ugly, but your character is ugly too.
Mil and Phil both cursed me when I was at my pal's house, alone taking care of Phil, who had become physically disabled. Today is our wedding anniversary, but my husband is away. He says he's on a business trip, but it's long been known that he's traveling with his affair partner anyway.
I'm sorry I've become like this. Sorry for all the trouble I've put you through.
Of all the members of my family, only Phil is concerned about me.
Why don't you just go back to your parents' house? I'll take care of the rest.
What? Oh, no, I can't leave you alone.
It'll be okay. I have an idea.
Phil said confidently. I believed him, dropped everything, and went home to my parents' house. My name is Olivia, a 35-year-old housewife. Phil is a hard-working businessman. My husband, Matthew, who is 2 years older than me, works as the managing director of FIL's company. We have been married for 8 years and have one child, a 7-year-old son. My in-laws' property is large enough for the house the president of the company, and we lived in a detached house built in one corner of the property. When we got married, Phil set us up so that we could spend time without worrying about my in-laws.
Housework is wife's job, isn't it? Why should I do it when you are there?
Saying this, Mil did not do any of the housework at my pal's house and forced me to do everything.
You have been a housewife too, you know. Why don't you do the housework over here?
Even when Phil tried to warn her, she wouldn't listen. On the contrary,
I can't believe she's trying to get in my husband's good graces just so she can have her own fun. What a vicious woman. Why did he marry such an ugly wife?
Mil, who doesn't like me, throws a fit. My husband has a sister who is also an accountant in FIL's company. She was married once, but had to come back out and live with her parents because of a bad marriage. Perhaps because her own marriage didn't work out. This Sil hates me in a way that is even worse than Mil.
I thought she was after our property anyway. She's a nasty woman.
She has the audacity to abuse me at every opportunity. When my son was born 7 years ago, Mil said, "What a cute boy. Now we don't have to worry about our successor." She was happy to see him, although there was something slightly troubling about the way she said that. I still had faint hopes that the birth of her grandson would change her attitude toward me a little, but in the end, her attitude toward me did not change.
Don't skip housework just because you have a baby. It has always been the wife's job to do the housework and take care of the kids.
Not only did she not change, but her criticism of me only grew stronger. My husband, who I had hoped would be able to mediate between us, came home late, and the atmosphere was such that he could not say anything to them. In such a situation, only Phil was on my side.
Olivia, I'm sorry, but could you clean up my study?
When I went there as requested, I found that the study was so clean and tidy that there was no need to clean it.
You can rest here for a while. I'll tell my wife you're helping me with my work.
He seemed to be a voracious reader, and among the books on business administration and economics, there were books on literature and the natural sciences.
If there is a book that interests you, I will lend it to you to read, he said gently.
My son also loved Phil and often came to this study to read his picture books and enjoy drawing, and after entering elementary school, he would ask Phil to help him with his homework. Spending time with Phil and son was my place in this house. However, those days did not last long. When I received a call that Phil had collapsed at work, I took my son to the hospital. When I arrived at the hospital, my husband and Sil were already waiting in front of the treatment room. Is he all right?
He had a stroke. There were people around, and they called the paramedics right away. So it doesn't look like he's going to die, but they think he may be paralyzed.
MIL hadn't come. She wasn't at home, so I thought she'd be over here by now.
I can't get in touch with her. I can't even get a cell phone signal. Don't you know her?
My husband asked his sister.
I don't know. I don't know where Mom goes every time.
I see. Well, it can't be helped.
At night, MIL finally came to the hospital. Unlike usual, she was strangely dressed up. I asked casually, "Where were you going?"
MIL replied, "Wherever I was, it doesn't matter. I received a call from an old friend who I haven't heard from long time, and it took rather long.
Matthew seemed to have called you several times on your cell phone.
I was too engrossed in our conversation to notice. I'm sorry," she replied, looking annoyed.
I wondered what he was so irritated about, but I couldn't say anything more. FIL's life was saved, but he was left paralyzed on the left side of his body. It was not his dominant arm, so even though he could manage to draw and eat, it was difficult for him to continue his work as president. For now, my husband decided to act as acting president until the next shareholders meeting. The question was who would take care of Phil.
I have the company to take care of, and I don't have time for that. You understand?
They can't do accounting work without me.
Caretaking is also the task of wife. What's a housewife for?
My husband, MIL, and Sil were all talking as if it was natural for me to do it. You are also a housewife. Besides, he's your husband. Aren't you going to help him at a time like this?
What? It's been a rule for a long time that a wife should listen to her MIL without talking. Don't talk back to me.
From the day Phil came home from the hospital, I had to do housework for 2 houses and take care of him.
I'm sorry I've become like this. I'm trying to do as much as I can for the company. So I was wondering if I could ask you to set up the computer for me. I can operate a mouse with one hand.
Even though his body has become crippled, Phil is still very considerate and does not want to burden me. My husband, on the other hand, seems to act as if he were the boss of the company. Rumors of this seem to have spread to Phil, who remotely sends instructions to company executives from his computer to clean up my husband's mess. My husband is coming home late more and more often, and he is often away overnight. When I asked him about this, he said, as acting president, I have important business meetings with suppliers, so what can I do? I'm the next president of the company. I thought that my husband was feeling the pressure of being the acting president. But then out of nowhere I heard a bad rumor. To my surprise, I heard that my husband was having an affair with a woman who used to be FIL's secretary. I couldn't believe my ears. But when I entered FIL's room to clean up, I heard, he did something stupid too. Phil muttered as he stared at the computer screen. What? I turned to Phil in surprise.
What the hell is he thinking when he has a wife who is so devoted to him? It's pathetic. Olivia, you don't have to do this. You don't have to worry about me. So why don't you go back to your parents' house for a while?
I can't leave you disabled alone. Although I tried to say so, the abusive language from MIL and Sil was getting worse day by day.
We told you to take care of him, and you're pretending to be devoted to him, but you're just looking for money, aren't you? You're a hypocrite.
I think so. She's so mean. Not only is your face ugly, but your character is ugly too.
On our recent wedding anniversary, when I was about to return to detached house after staying alone to take care of Phil, words were thrown at me by both of them. My husband didn't come back, saying he was on a business trip, but it was probably a trip with his affair partner anyway. I had long since realized that I was mentally trapped and decided to take my son back home with me.
I'll take care of the rest. Don't worry.
FIL's words pushed me to pack up my belongings while my in-laws were out. Let's go visit Mom's grandparents, I told my son. Sometime after returning home to my parents' house, my son asked, Mom, when are you coming home? Well, I may not go home. What will you do then?
I don't mind. I can go to school from here. Grandpa and Grandma are nice. But I wonder if Grandpa over there will be okay?
My son was worried about Phil, even though he was a small boy.
I don't really like Grandma and Auntie over there, because they bully my mom.
Both MIL and SIL seemed to be taking good care of my son. But the child's eyes were not deceived. I was a little relieved, as I had thought that he wanted to go back to his pal's house, and FIL's plan was about to be put into action. One day, just as I was thinking this, the doorbell rang. Yes, I'm coming. Through the intercom monitor, I saw MIL and SIL standing there.
Excuse me, Olivia. I know you're in there. Open up.
Yes. What's going on when you're gone without saying a word? Let me hear why.
Not wanting them to make too much noise at the door, I opened the front door. Both of them were carrying large castor bags as if they were returning from a trip. You were probably on a trip. So where? I asked deliberately.
As my husband suggested that we could go to overseas, so we went to Hawaii for a week with my daughter, and when I came back, the house was on sale. You must know something. Where is my husband?
What are we going to do now that we don't have a home to go back to?
The bullying against me continued to escalate, so Phil decided to make a plan. Then the chime rang again. Wait a minute, please. My husband's image appeared on the monitor screen. Oh my God. How did you know they are here? I spoke to my husband over the intercom.
Hey, what's wrong with our house? Open this door.
My husband looks impatient. I opened the door and let him in. I wonder if it's been a long time since you've been home.
I was away for a while on a business trip. And then
I had learned from Phil that my husband had gone AWOL from work and had almost eloped with his lover, just in time. Your mother and sister are here, so just come on up anyway. When he heard that they were there, my husband looked uncomfortable, but he went in.
Matthew, where have you been wandering around on your day off from work? Everyone's in an uproar.
Hearing this, my husband's face turned pale.
that's...
Yes, Dad's really mad at you. He says he can't leave the company in your hands after all. What are you going to do?
MIL yelled at my husband. Now that everyone is here, what are you going to do? I asked. Phil should be living comfortably in an assisted living apartment by now. FIL's household goods were stored in a pay-per-use container box. I was told that if I could hear their apologize to me, I could tell them where he was and where the household goods were. However, all I heard from them was bitter words about Phil and abusive remarks about me. MIL, where were you when your husband collapsed? MIL fell silent. I wondered why she left me to do all the housework and sometimes dressed up. Please answer me.
I told you that I was meeting a friend. Why are you asking me that now?
You didn't, did you? You were meeting someone you met on a matching app, right? Your husband had asked them to investigate, and I saw through it all. MIL's complexion changes. Matthew, I heard you had an affair with someone who used to be your father's secretary. He was also saddened. And I told Sil that Phil was aware of the fact that Sil was abusing her position as an accountant and spending the company's money. All of you have done rascal things. You must be so pathetic. So my remark, what do you mean? Yes. Who do you think you are? You know where my dad is, don't you? Tell me. They began cursing me foul-mouthed like that. I have nothing to say anymore. Please leave me, I said crisply. My parents will be home soon. Please come again if needed. If you make too much noise, I will call the police. The three of them stared at me, but I guess they thought it was useless, and they quietly left. After that, they asked around and finally found out where Phil was. I had been in touch with him from time to time, so that's when I heard about it. As it turned out, MIL was divorced by him, and my husband and Sil were fired from their jobs. My husband was going to elope with a woman who was his secretary, but he ended up being cheated out of his money. I had to divorce my husband as well. Phil introduced me to a job as a way to at least atonement for his sins. Even though I was living at home, I was just wondering what I was going to do with my child, so that was a big help. At any rate, Phil told them where to store their household goods, but since they had no savings or income and could not fit into the apartment they finally rented, they sold it to a recycle store to pay for their living expenses. The husband went to the company and appealed to them to reinstate him to his position, but I heard that he was turned away at the door because there was no way they would trust someone who had abandoned his duties as acting president and was about to run off with a woman. After that, the company was able to recover by allowing Phil to stay on as chairman and entrusting his trusted subordinate as vice president. I am in the process of looking for a house where I can live with my son while living at home. My parents have asked me to stay and live with them, and I am a little shaken up about it. My son will soon be in 2nd grade. My parents love my son and he misses them. Considering the child care expenses, I'm beginning to think that living with them is an option. My parents will be taking care of my son for a while, but I will do my best to live with my son.